Hi, my name is Stephanie. I am from Vieques, and I'm gonna share a little bit of my journey getting to know Christ. I was brought up um, somewhat Catholic. I was taking through the classes and the first communion and all of that. But then with the years, I was brought up by my grandma who took me to all of these, but we stopped going to church. When I was around 15 years old, um, it's a funny story because I wasn't really allowed to go to any other church, and I was never taken back to Catholic church. And I kind of wanted to get to know Christ because there was a small Christian group in my high school where they would just get together and play a couple songs in the break of lunchtime. And I got intrigued, and I wanted to go to church, and I wanted to get to know Christ. So what I would do is that I would tell my grandmother that I was gonna go to some sort of party, and I would dress up if I was gonna go to a party, and then I had in a backpack clothes to go to church. So usually people change and say they're gonna go to a friend's house or to church, and then they end up at a party. I did the opposite, which I find it really funny now after I grew up. So I did that for a little bit, and then I went to college, and I couldn't go back to the church where I was because it wasn't here in this island, and I had to go to another island, which is the main island, Puerto Rico, so I can go to college. And I couldn't go to church anymore because between school and work, I never had days off for going to church anyway. And then I went through a lot of really, really rough situations in my life, a lot of struggle, a lot of heartache. I had a really rough upbringing um, because in the beginning I lived with my grandmother, which was very difficult to live with. And then at 15, I went to live with my mother, and she struggled a lot with alcoholism and drug addiction. And there was a lot of lack, a lot of uh, trouble, and a lot of darkness in my upbringing. And I went to college, and now I am somewhere new. I don't have any friends. I don't have a support group, and I don't have church. And I fell into depression, and I just overworked till I was completely tired, just to not think. And then I felt very lonely and very empty. And I started, instead of looking for God, I started looking for different religions because I thought in my mind, who is this God that I'm following? And am I just following God because I'm told to? Am I just, do I have this faith because this is what I was brought up in? And then I started thinking, if I was born in, let's say, India, I would be into Hinduism. If I was born in China, I would be in Buddhism. Is this just like a society thing, or what am I actually believing in? So I went down a path of just getting to know different religions and trying to understand what each of them meant. And somehow, the more I studied it, the more I knew about what they were talking about, and the more I kept finding God and His Word and His nature on all of the other religions. It's like the other religions were disguising what is made by God under their religion with different names. And the same thing started happening with science. When I studied a little more of science, the same thing started happening um, when I started trying to understand human nature. I really enjoy trying to understand how we humans think and how our biology acts in emotional ways. And I kept finding God everywhere until it was like there was just no doubt because there was so much evidence. And at first I was a little proud and I didn't want to really admit it, or maybe I was just maybe connecting dots that were not really there. But it became so overwhelming that it was just, there's no way that God is not real. So I didn't really fully get into following God completely with my heart because I still had a lot of pain in my heart. I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of frustrations because I went through very, very dark things. And I would always ask God, God, where were you when this happened to me? And why did I have to go through that? And why did I have to go through so much pain? It's not fair. What did I do to deserve it? And I remember on one of those nights where I was visiting church, hiding from my grandma, a lady told me that she reminded me of this character in the Bible where his brothers sold him to other people and left him for dead, and then he ended up um, saving his family from famine and from terrible things. And what she said is that God was putting me in places and situations where I'm going to struggle, but it will help me reach those people who are just in the same spot that I am, and I will be the only one that could really reach them. And I didn't really understand what that meant at the time, but with the years, that became a lot more true in my heart. And then a few years later, after Hurricane Maria, I lost everything I had. At that time, I was married and I got divorced. Um, So I was 24 years old. I've lost everything. I didn't have anywhere to go to. I had $9 in my bank account and I was getting divorced. So basically, the whole world came crashing down on me. And what I did, I found a friend who had a disaster relief little gig that he would do every now and then. And then he offered me to help me get to California. And I was like, okay, I'll take on your help. So I worked from 4 in the morning to 9 at night, 7 days a week for 6 months to save us $6,000. I wasn't getting paid that much, but I was just determined to get out of here. And I said in my heart, I'm never coming back to this island ever again because there was so much suffering that I went through here and so much loss and so much lack of love that I just didn't want to step foot in this place ever again. So I did that and I arrived to California. A month after I was there, I still haven't found a job or a place to stay. And the friend, which I thought was my friend, he left to go travel Europe, and I was alone. And I was living under bus stops and just living in the street for quite a while until I finally found a job. And thankfully, I went from one of the lowest positions and I went up like 3 or 4 positions in like 2 years. And I I grew so much there and I felt so proud of myself, but I wasn't really searching God that much. And there was this one position I really wanted to get and I tried very, very hard and I overworked myself and I gave it my all. And when I finally received it, I thought that I was going to be the happiest person in the world. I was going to be achieved. I had finally achieved greatness. I had achieved success, like a better income. I was gonna be in the top of the world. The same day that I got that position, I came back home to an empty apartment and I just cried my eyes out. I felt so empty. Nothing mattered. All of the work that I've done didn't matter at the end of the day because I just felt so empty. I felt like it wasn't enough and I thought that that achievement will finally feel that emptiness that just was over me like a cloud of just desperation. I was just so desperate for that hole and that pain to go away, achieving that. And I didn't. It didn't work and it wasn't worth it. And I suffered so much because I thought this was my answer. And that was my lowest point. Um, Soon after, COVID started being a thing. And eventually, the place where I worked at had to be closed down. The place where I living at, I got displaced because of fires. And I had to move in with an uncle who I've only met once in my life when I was a kid. Um, Thankfully, his wife was very loving and she received me in her home. But I couldn't stay there much longer because I just couldn't find a job, and I had to come back here, gritting my teeth. I was kind of like Jonah. He didn't want to go to Nineveh. I didn't want to come back to Vieques, and I hated this place. And I came here, and I spent a whole year not being able to find a job after years of just overworking my pain away. I was a workaholic. I didn't want to do anything that wasn't just work because I didn't want to think. And then being a whole year where I have to sit with my thoughts for a whole year, um, it was one of the most painful deserts I've experienced in my life. And slowly, the desperation was so much, and I was broken down so much. I was gritted to sand so deeply that I was just like, God, I give up. Like, I give up. I don't want to do what I want anymore. I don't want to find my own way anymore. I don't want to be in charge anymore. I don't want to look for my desires. I don't want to look for what I think is right. I don't want to find my own way anymore. Like, I keep messing up. I don't want to keep messing up. I want to follow you, and I want to know what that feels like, and I don't want to be a hypocrite doing it. I don't want to just be here in the emotions and cry about it and tell you I surrender, and the next day try to do it my own way. I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm not saying that everything changed from that moment on, because I still struggle with wanting to get back control. I wanted so badly to know what's going to happen. I would always plan ahead. I would always want to just know what's going to happen and know that I'm in control and know that I have everything thought out. If something happens, I already planned for that and I'm ready for it. And to let go of that control is one of the hardest things I ever done in my life, because when people had to take care of me as a kid, they did it. When I was supposed to be protected by a parent, that parent didn't protect me. When I was hungry, no one fed me. When I was alone, there was no one there, human being, obviously. After years, I knew that God was always there. But I was so disappointed with just being so alone and suffering and having so much lack that I wanted that control to feel safe. But I had to understand that I can't do it by myself. And as much as I try to want to have control, I can't control life. I can't control circumstances. I don't know what the future has for me. And I don't have all of the context. I don't have all of the knowledge. So after a couple years of really wrestling with God and wrestling with the Holy Spirit and with my flesh and with myself, I finally came to a point where right now, if I end up in a street and I lose my job, if I lose my relationships, if I lose everything, I will be in peace, because I know that God has me. And it feels now like if I were carrying this very heavy backpack my whole life, just with pounds and pounds of weight and pain and suffering, just all in that backpack. And I've carried that my whole life. And when I genuinely surrendered and was like, you know, God, take it all. You're in charge. It's like that backpack got stripped off from me. And now life is not perfect, but I have so much peace and I don't worry as much. My anxiety is basically gone because I know He's there. And it doesn't matter how scary the world might look like around me. It doesn't matter if I'm walking with darkness all around me. I know He's with me, so why be afraid and why doubt? If the one who created everything is here with me, and He holds me and He protects me and He provides for me. So I'm no longer afraid and I'm no longer scared. I'm no longer scared of lack, and I can honestly say that I don't even want to have control. So that's my story, and I hope it helps you. And take heart and know that I am your God. That's what God says. So